I will. Okay, so now we're live, so be careful about what you say. We're recording. We're not actually broadcasting live anywhere, but we are recording it. So what I wanted to spend some time today talking about is paperless archaeology, because that is a thing that we are starting to implement. For those of you who came on for those of you who've been coming on expeditions over the past 3 or 4 years, you know that we've been gradually starting to add, have tablet out at the site and the phone out at the site, and gradually starting to use digital as a way for doing some of our recording. And last fall, we made we really did a kind of a test pilot on what paperless excavation might look like. So we actually ran paperless recording alongside paper recording. So we were doing a lot of recording and really trying to explore sort of what that system would look like. This is all in the midst of us transitioning over to using geographic information systems as a way to really start putting all of our data and information into a geospatial analytical system, which is exactly what all of our data is, right? It's all those artifacts are tied to space, to a location, and so really trying to understand or trying to use the right tools to help us do the most effective analysis. So I'm going to start up the slide presentation here. And as I was telling Dean, this is the busiest moment in the Brock household, noon. So who knows which 3.5-year-old we might be graced with their presence at some point, but I'm sure none of you will argue. So probably rather see them than you would me. So paperless archaeology. I wanted to start by really that first rule in archaeology, right? The one that we talk about all the time, the importance of context, and the way for archaeologists to preserve context, right, is by documenting. We record everything. We record it once, we record it twice. Sometimes we document it a third time. And this really is what the archaeological methodology is. It's the difference between us being a science and doing archaeology and us being looters, is the fact that we record what we find and in order to preserve its context. So this is really rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3. It's what makes archaeology archaeology, what makes our methodology what it is, and distinct from anybody else who takes things out of the ground, right? We protect and preserve context. And the main way, the main medium for doing that recording is paper. Lots of paper, so much paper, just tons of paper. We have paper to record everything. There is not one thing we don't record, and it all gets its own sheet of paper. So this is just a list that I came up with off the top of my head of the thing. I'm sure that there's even more paper that I'm forgetting, but we have a unit checkout sheet, a feature checkout sheet, a sample checkout sheet. We have strat sheets for every strata. We have feature pages for every feature. We have elevation paperwork we have to write down. We have notebooks that we all keep. We have maps of features, of profiles, of strata. We have STP forms and inventory forms and a photo log and a site stratum checkout and some matrix and another matrix. We have to record the nail elevations. We have to record the unit maps. We have to take photos, unit photos, elevation maps, metal detector forms, site maps. So many things all require paper. And all of those things then go into, right? I mean, like, this is an image of one binder's worth of paper. And Chris, I mean, how many binders do we generate per field season? 10?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it'll range anywhere from 5 to 10 or more. Like the Grove just had, I don't know if anyone's seen my desk. I can't hear Chris,
but I don't know if other people.
Oh, can other people hear me?
Can other folks hear Chris?
I can hear him.
All right. I
Yeah.
just, for some reason,
Lots
can't
of
hear any of you.
binders.
So I assume you're just talking about how wonderful my presentation is going so far.
It's so good. So good.
Odd. At any rate, I'll keep going. So not only do we record all of these things on paper, as long as you all can hear me, that should probably be good enough, right? So not only do we have to record all of these things, but each one of these sheets has all kinds of data on top of it, right? So here's just the first sheet of a strat card, right? This is all the information that we put on that sheet, right? So we are recording, as those of you who've worked with us, and this is just the first page of a strat sheet. There's a whole back to a strat sheet, right? So the amount of information that we collect to tell us about each strata is immense, right? But paper comes along with a lot of challenges. There are lots of things that make our work not as efficient as it could be because of paper. So first off, paper 100% flammable, right? It can catch on fire. This is a super practical thing, but it can catch on fire. And so that means that it is, in fact, although it always feels like it's very secure because you can like hold it in your hand and it's not like in the cloud or whatever. You can feel it, you can touch it. So it feels like it's really a secure means of writing things down, right? Like having a hard copy. But in reality, one sheet of paper is actually pretty at risk. So it can catch on fire in the field if it gets wet, right? Because it does rain and we are working outside. That can damage paper, right? Rodents like to chew it and turn nests into it. There's a whole blog post about rodent nests and being created out of paper that are found in the restoration, right? So, and currently every single piece of paper that Montpelier has written something down on is stored in a old building, the archaeology offices, in binders on shelves. It is a giant tinderbox. And, right, and I don't even know where the closest fire station is, probably in Orange somewhere, right? So we really do have to think about the fact that paper is actually not necessarily as secure as we might want it to be from a preservation standpoint, right? So that information is all at risk. Thanks to the IMLS grant that we've gotten recently, we have scanned the documents from the restoration, and we have scanned every document that we've recorded since 2014. So we at least have digital copies of those sheets of paper now. But there's still a lot of records before and in between those time periods that are unscanned, and so we only have one copy of them. So another challenge, we just have so much paper. And like I literally was like, oh, I could like figure out the math to try to calculate, but I'd be doing it forever. But the point is that it takes up space. Paper takes up space, and space costs money. And I honestly am not even sure where we would put another season's worth of binders. I'm not confident we even have space for it at the moment. Another reality, only about 30% of each strata sheet that we record actually makes it into a database. So all of that information that I showed you, all those things that we record, a whole lot of that actually doesn't get data entered. 30% sort of an estimate. I didn't like really do serious math on it, but I sort of looked and was like, oh, that makes it in, that makes it in. And a whole bunch of these things don't. So this may even be, I may be being generous. In fact, technically, 0% of our stratum sheets and feature sheets are actually put into the database. There is no table in our database that specifically says stratum sheets and is specifically for that. Our database is really designed to record samples and to record the artifacts in those samples. So if a sample didn't get taken, if no sample was taken out of a strat, like how we don't usually take samples out of our sod layer, that stratum actually does not get recorded in any way in our database, because there is no sample that says MT1200.0. That sample doesn't exist, so it doesn't get entered in our database. That's not necessarily good or bad. That is just the reality of our situation, right? And how our database was designed. So there are tables for site strata, which is looking at, okay, when you take all these layers together, they create the destruction layer in the south yard, right? There's that combined information. And that exists largely so that we can then say, okay, show me all the artifacts that are in that combined layer, which come from samples, right? But that doesn't require us to put all of that intricate information like soil color and texture, thickness, all of those things that we record into that space. For the things that we do digitize, it's twice the work. It's 2 times the work. We record something in the field, and then we have to data enter it. So we have to write MT1200 on the sheet, and then we have to put it in the database, right? We have to draw the map on paper, and then we have to scan it, and then we have to draw the map in the digital space. We have to take the picture in the field, and then we have to digitize the picture in the space. Ask our summer intern, Emmy, about this. She's been digitizing for the last 3 weeks, photographs, right? This is stuff that we have to do multiple times. So for everything we have to record it again. So that's not an efficient system, right? It's the most efficient system if you only have paper. It's the only way to do it. But if there was an alternative, it would save us literally half of the work that we do. It's really hard to organize paper and do analysis on it, right? If you have one sheet of paper or one note card, you can only file this one way. When you're building an organizational system for your paper, you can only put it in one place. So we organize all of our things by unit, right? But we also then put those in the binders for the project that happened by year. That becomes really complicated when, let's say, in 2014, you did a bunch of excavations in the southwest yard. So you've got 10 binders worth of units from the southwest yard. But then in 2019 or 2018, you go back to that same site and you open up a bunch of those units because you didn't finish excavating them. So you excavate them again. Where do you put that new paperwork? Do you put it in with the 2014 stuff? Because it's not 2014 stuff. Or do you put it in the 2019 stuff? But then what about the strats that are associated with the same unit that's in 2014? Do you bring that over and put it in the 2019 stuff? But then it's not in the 2014 stuff, right? So you can't find, so you could make photocopies, I guess, and put everything in this, but that's a lot of work, right? So you can only put one sheet of paper in one place. This also makes analysis really, really hard, because while you organize your everything by unit, the analysis we want to do is actually by strata, right? So I want to look at the layers that are associated with destruction. I want to look at them in units 1200, 1201, 1202, 1203, 1204. Well, that may be layer A, layer C, layer D, layer B, layer G, right? And all of those different units that are all organized in different units. So I have to go and take those sheets of paper out of each one of those units to look at them, and right, and I physically have to remove those from, and I have to put them back. And you can start to see how this, and ironically, you then have to generate a new sheet of paper to record all of that information on, right? A matrix that we use to do the analysis on these site strata. So you're just generating more and more paper. So it starts to become pretty cumbersome to start doing this analysis. And of course, this is how archaeologists have been doing this analysis for a long time. The point of this presentation is, in part, there are new ways. There might be slightly better ways that are more efficient that we can use now. And that is digital field recording. And I'm sure I probably only touched on a couple of, there's probably more things that more obstacles, more things that paper makes hard. But those are sort of the ones that, for me at least, are really, really prominent. So digital field recording solves some of these problems. And let me look in the chat, see if there's any. All right. Oh yeah, Chris, good note. Handwriting. That's another problem that paper. There are some archaeologists, myself included, who have completely illegible handwriting and spell things wrong, and there are soil descriptions that I've seen that literally don't exist. Like clay, sandy, loam silt, or what, like that's not on the triangle. That doesn't exist. It's not an actual soil type, right? But with paper, you can't control for those things, right? You can't, aside from checking, which is obviously good practice. But if you just had a pull down and you knew, okay, these are the only soil textures that exist, so you got to pick one of these, and now they're all spelled right also, right? We'll never have to ask ever again how phyllite is spelled, which I think is our probably most misspelled. I don't even know how to spell it at this point because it's been spelled so many ways. So that's really one of the another great point is it's hard to standardize the way things are written and recorded with paper. So digital field recording. Do you all have any questions? I think if you just throw them in the chat, that might be the best way, since for whatever reason I can't hear you all. So I've got that window open if you want to toss it in. Happy to address it. It may have something to do with the shared screen. So perhaps when I come out of this, I'll be able to hear your voices again. So digital field recording helps us solve a lot of these problems. It's going to help us use our time more efficiently. It's going to allow for more efficient analysis. It's going to allow us to organize our data in as many different ways as we want to. It's going to allow us to put things directly into the spatial analysis systems, and it's going to allow us to digitize every piece of information that we record, because we're going to be recording it immediately in a digital format. So obstacles, right? Because there are, of course, obstacles to implementing a digital paper, a paperless system. We have to buy hardware. That costs money, right? We need the tools in order to actually do the work. We need the expertise. We need people who know how to build these systems. We need to find the right workflow and figure out what the best system is for us to record all of this stuff. We need to figure out whether or not we need to be connected to the internet while we do all of this stuff, or to the cloud, and what the best systems are for that. And then we actually need the time and resources to build the system, right? Well, for all the things that are challenging with a paper system, at least it is a system that exists, right? We don't have to spend time in building it, and making it and designing it. It's already there. So these are all challenges that that we've been able to address. Hardware, we now have hardware. Generous support from Cindy has allowed us to get the hardware to do that. And if you look at my screen, I've just got boxes and stacks of iPads in my office, which is also my dining room and also where my bar is. So best office I've ever had. Technological expertise. We've been doing a lot of work to learn how to use these tools, and some of that's involved taking classes to learn how to use GIS. Lots of trial and error. So I've been taking courses at University of Richmond, for example, as Chris and Hannah, to really learn how to do this work. and to build relationships with colleagues and faculty who are experts in this so we can get the right advice and know where to ask questions. And then finding the right workflow, that's what we did last fall, was really trying to think about what are the systems that are gonna work. We're currently working on connectivity. We do have some of our tablets that are gonna have data plans on them to get us through this field season, but we're also working with our IT department to figure out ways to get Wi-Fi out to the sites that we're working on. And we're also going to be testing some methods for collecting this data offline and then merging it together when we are able to be online. And then building the system, which is what I've been working on and off, and has been actually really well integrated with the IMLS project that we're working on as well. That project is really kind of figuring out how to get data that's already been recorded into GIS, and whereas this is really thinking about, okay, how are we going to bring all the data that we're collecting into the future into GIS? And so those have been really dovetailed and working together. Any questions so far? All right, hardware. What tools are we using? We're going to be using the iPad Pro 11-inch, second generation. It's the brand new machine that just came out. It's gorgeous. I love it. In off time, I just snuggle with all the iPads here at home. A lot of reasons that we chose iPads. One of them is this guy right here, the Apple Pencil. So I've been dreaming of doing paperless archaeology since about 2006, since iPads came out. So I have used every kind of stylus that exists to try to find one where I actually felt like I could draw a map and it was going to feel like I was drawing with paper. And this is the first one I've come across that feels, and it responds to the amount of pressure you put on the screen. I mean, it's a really fantastic device. So they're of course white, so these will all be red by the end of the field season. But it's a really incredible tool, and so that's another reason why we wanted to go with iPads. iOS is a system that most people are familiar with, particularly in mobile devices. So I wasn't worried about adopting some, like using Trimble data collection devices or something like that, where everyone's at least carrying a mobile phone in their pocket, and a lot of people have used iOS one way or the other. So I was not worried about this being some sort of strange barrier to entry for the team. It's an Apple product, so there's support just coming out, I mean, everywhere. So that's also great, and that's actually really paid off in the last couple of weeks, as I've been learning how to get these all into multiple device management systems and stuff like that. So both there's support from Apple, but there's also lots of third-party software and systems that exist that integrate with iPads. The camera is fantastic. And they also, in this newest iPad, came out with a LiDAR function that allows us to do, will allow us to do lots of interactive AR and stuff like that. So the things that iPads are, the imaging advances that iPad is making are dovetail really well with the type of engaged work that we're going to want to be able to do as we move forward, particularly with the Overseer and Home Farm projects. And also important, the Esri software that we want to be using to get things directly into ArcGIS Pro is supported through Apple. So and it's really for digital data field collection. The iPad is sort of their flagship tablet of choice. So that as well, the software goes on it. Speaking of software. These are we're really only using two, I guess three. I forgot about Airtable because we've been using it for so long. now. But two main pieces that are new for us: ArcGIS Collector, which is the main mobile app that Esri uses for data collection on the tablet, and then an application called Graphic, which is a drawing app. And what's great about this app is it exports shape files, so we can actually draw things to scale. So we can tell it this point to this point equals 5 feet, and then it will export that scaled into a new file that we can suck into GIS, and it's right, and put it right where we want it to be, and it's all got that measurement information as part of it. So these are really the there's other apps that we're going to be using for tiny stuff, but like Google Drive and things like that for writing documents and making spreadsheets and stuff. But this is where the data is really going to collect, and it's what I'm going to show you some of today. And I should say that Collector works with ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro, which is the cloud-based GIS system, and the desktop GIS systems. And that all works seamlessly. And I'll put that in quotes, just because nothing's completely seamless. And Esri is so big that it's not always clear that all of these different entities, like that the people designing the stuff, are actually talking to each other. So what kind of advantages, what new things are we gonna, so we're gonna be able to solve a lot of the problems that I talked about before. But there's also gonna come along with some advantages that are gonna make the work we can do really unique. So some advantages: real-time data entry. We pull something out of the ground, right? We take a measurement, it immediately is recorded as a digital item, a digital object, right? There's not put it on the paper, scan it, and then data enter it. It's going right into the system we want it in. Everything that we collect, all the data we collect, is going to become digital, right? So all of that information, soil color, all of that stuff that we hadn't been data entering before is now going to be in a digital system. All our maps are going to be drawn in a digital system, so we won't have to draw them on paper and then draw them digitally. They can go directly into digital format. And that not only saves us time just because we don't have to draw them twice, but as the person who writes the reports, we'll also be able to immediately format them in the system that's going to make them go directly into GIS, but also can format them immediately into a system that's going to look pretty in a report. And I'll show you guys that as long as we have time. So I'm doing all right. The analysis we're going to be able to do is practically going to be happening in real time. And this is incredibly useful, both in terms of how we are, the decisions we make in the field. Where do we put the next unit? Where do we need to do this? Where do we need to do that? But also in terms of the speed at which we're going to be able to generate the final reports, which then means we're going to more quickly generate public interpretation and things like that as well, right? Because like Jen can't build a building until I write a report about what we found in the archaeology. That can't happen. Something has to, I have to report on what we found in order for Jen to be like, oh, that's this kind of building and we need these size timbers and blah, 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 blah. So this is gonna speed up that process significantly because we're only gonna have to do all this stuff once. Also, the analysis can be very quickly public facing. And I'll show a little bit about how we can do that. And our reports can be a lot more public facing, a lot more interactive, and thereby increasing the likelihood that someone might read them. Raise your hand if you've read one of my reports. Yeah, all right, that's God bless you. All right, and some of you I didn't tell to read my report, so that's great. Okay, so how does it all work? this is where we're going to see if we can, well, first, why don't we, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, should I put it in the chat?
It looks like he's having some issues with hearing. You could throw it in the chat while he's figuring it out.
I can hear you. I can hear you guys now. Go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, okay. So in that real-time analysis, do you have any good examples? I mean, like you mentioned, like what's the next step or where we're going to put the next unit kind of stuff. Do you have any like dramatic examples of how looking back at a previous year, like, whoa, if I had been able to analyze this more granularly when things were going on, we would have done X or Y differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. Trying to think. I mean, in some ways it's, so like an example I'll be able to show you actually when we get in.
Everything would be different.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also we've been operating under the same system for so long. But, you know, now it's a matter of having everything at our fingertips immediately, right? Every photograph that we've taken, you know, I can look at. I don't have to go down to the office, dig through the digital photos, pull up the thing that we think might have been, you know, I'll just be able to say like, ooh, I wonder what unit B or strat B looked like in the unit next to this that we excavated in 2014. I could just click on that square and pull up the picture and see it.
Yeah. Right
while I'm standing next to the unit, right? And be like, that picture, yep, it looks like that feature's crossing over. We should probably, you know, do whatever. I'm also going to be able to layer additional pieces of data like ground penetrating radar and LiDAR and all of those things I can layer. So I'll show you all the site map that we used last year at the Overseer site and sort of how that all ties in.
Okay.
Any other questions about what we kind of have gone over so far? Okay. Well, let's look at an iPad. Hold on.
Well, Terry's figuring that out. Another thing is like we can see where utilities are. Like sometimes you're digging, you're like, what's going on in this unit? Why is there like a beer bottle from the 90s a foot down in this unit? Maybe there's a utility here. Why don't we know that? Instead of like sending someone down to like fish through old records, you can immediately see it on the site map on the iPad because it's been digitized. And just know that unit's totally disturbed, which is very convenient.
Okay, can you all see my house? Yes? Cool, all right. So this is collector, and we're gonna zip ourselves over to a space that you all know well. I'm sure this is very clear to you, but there's everyone's favorite mansion, their favorite visitor center, their favorite second favorite parking lot. Your favorite parking lot is, of course, down here, right? It's your favorite parking lot. Your favorite archaeology lab. So what I'm going to show you right now is the shovel test pit map. This is every shovel test pit that we have not dug yet. So what we've done is created a map that has on a 10-foot grid, and we've preset where every STP that we're ever going to dig is going to be. So for those of you who don't know what an STP is, it's called a shovel test pit. It's a form of doing archaeological survey. So what we do is we dig holes on a grid straight down. We take all the dirt out, we sift it, we collect the artifacts, we record the depths and any strata that we see in that hole. This is the old way that we would do it. Record all that on paper, record the sort of general artifact counts for ceramics, bone, glass, nails, things like that. Record those all on paper, take all that back to the office, data enter all of it, put it into the database, pull it out of the database, put it into Surfer, make a distribution map. While all that's happening, because I needed this information really fast, because we're usually doing an STP survey to then figure out where to put excavation units, I'd actually have the person running the survey keeping a paper map where they would, not only would the stuff get written down on the sheets that got data entered, but they were also writing those artifacts down in like little scrunchy numbers next to each dot, so that I could just look at that map without actually doing all the data entry and all that stuff, because I had to make a decision about, like, we need a unit here now because 15 people are coming to do their expedition next week and we have to have stuff ready for them to do, right? We don't have time to data enter it and make a pretty map and do a detailed analysis of the STPs, right? So now we don't have to do any of that. So this is, so all the gray dots are STPs that haven't been dug, right? And their labels are based on a grid. It's a alphanumeric numbering system. And what we'll do when we do survey is I will highlight in GIS a series of, I'll give Chris and the crew coordinates of a box. I'll give them the four corners of this square. They'll go out with the total station and shoot that in, stretch tapes and put pin flags every 10 feet. It's just, for those of you who come with a metal detecting program, the grid will look exactly like that, right? Label them, and then they'll start digging holes that are on that grid. And I actually asked them to go in this morning, Hannah and Chris, and fill out a number of these STPs in a made up pretend STP survey. So it was the fastest shovel test pit survey ever conducted, all with made up data. But what they would do in actual time, right, is a little icon of them would appear and they'd walk up in the same way that, since we're on top of my house in Henrico right now, I can't really show you that. But I mean, I can technically show you, it'll look like that, right? And they'll walk up next to their to the pin flag, look at it, double check it to make sure that it matches EU ET612. They'll click on it, and up comes their data entry sheet. They can click the edit button, and now they're collecting data, so they can change the status. Did they excavate it? Were there any artifacts in it? Were there not? Right, this would be a negative STP, no artifacts. This would be a positive STP, there's artifacts. Was there a feature in it? No. What's the depth? 1.2 feet. Did you collect artifacts? Did you rebury them? Did you just collect something? Were there no artifacts in there, right? So we reburied the artifacts. How many ceramics? How many bone? How many shell? How much window glass? How much bottle glass? How many nails? Were there other pieces of iron? How many? Any small finds? Modern stuff, right? Any notes? How much brick? Yada, yada, yada. We're taking soil chem samples. So what's the sample number for the soil chem? And then lay all the artifacts out, take a picture of them. We decided we're going to actually rebury artifacts this year, so we don't have to mess with cataloging them and finding places to put them. This should be enough. Hit the submit button, and voila, you've collected data for that point. So Chris and Taylor went through, and you can see I can already look at this map, right? And I can start to, I know that bring up the legend, right? So I know that I can start to look and be like, okay, it looks like we've got a bunch of positive STPs. Can you see my cursor? Does that show up? So we've got a bunch of positive STPs down here, right? We've got negatives up here. It looks like we still got some we have to dig. We're not quite done yet. So I can sit at home here and be like, Chris, why haven't you dug those 3 STPs yet? Right? So, and then the other thing I can do very, very quickly. Remember, I had them do this morning. So I can make a distribution map. This took 2 minutes. It was literally just the amount of time it took to calculate the information. This is a distribution of all the ceramics that were found. So I can make this in practically real time. Chris can be like, we're done. And I can be like, I can push the button and I'll have a distribution map of every ceramic type, total artifact type, so on and so forth. So what does this tell me? This tells me that, man, we may have an archaeology site up here and we may have one down here, but there's no reason for me to put an excavation unit right in here, right? There's nothing happening in here. There might be a road trace or something like that, but there's not a building or a trash pit or anything like that. So this is, so like, just like that, we're going to be able to collect this information using these digital tools and analytical tools. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? And then the other fun thing is that we can, you all can see all this too in real time if you want, because GIS can do amazing things. So here, I'm just going to throw this in the chat window here. But if you go ahead and visit that link, what you'll see is a map that I've made very, very quickly that shows you the distribution plot, right? It shows you exactly what I just showed you, but you all can access it. Here, and I'll share the screen in case. So you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can do all kinds of things with this. You can click on a button, click on a STP if you want to see what got collected out of it, right? So like what was found on this guy, what was found on that guy. I should probably click on one that's a positive, right? So look, 2 ceramics in this guy, 1 piece of window glass. Stuff like that. And of course, I know that you all will enter zeros for when we don't have anything, because no data is data. And then also the distribution maps, right? So can make these, and you can envision something that has all of these maps, one for each different type of artifact. So people in the public can look and actually see in real time the analysis as it's going on, as it's happening. So this is really cool, I think, because not only does this going to help us do this analysis so quickly and make really quick judgments about what we need to do in the field, where we need to move next, but it also is going to help us do the other thing we really want to do is at Montpelier is show you all the process, show you the data, show you how we're making these decisions about where we want to excavate next. So this is something I'm really excited about. It's one of the reasons why we really want to do all this with Esri, because Esri has these tools to build this. This is the GIS company that that we're doing all this in, and it's the other reason why figuring out how to get the connectivity and stuff like that working is really important, because we can do it. Like you can sit at home and watch the field crew dig shovel test pits now and like actually see the patterns take shape, which I think is really fun, and a sort of a different way of seeing the archaeological process that we typically can't do. Any questions about that bit? I'm going to show you field stuff next.
Dean had a good question in the chat.
Let's see. Yeah, so soil chem analysis is gonna that is not gonna happen instantly. That's gonna have to go to a lab and that stuff. So that's gonna be really really tricky. How will this work with volunteers or students in the field with staff? You're gonna get to learn how to do it. So this is, I mean, in the same way that we integrate you all into the paperwork and stuff like that when it's paper, we're going to integrate you into how we do it with the tablets. And I think you will find that it's it's actually quite the same. We're collecting the same information. All the info's that, like, in some ways we're collecting less because we discovered that we had lots of redundancies and we were collecting the same thing and putting it on the same sheet multiple times and stuff like that, because it was just easier to like look at the sheet of paper and be like, oh, there's the elevation information and here it is on this. So some of it's going to be different, but that's really kind of yeah. I think well, Cindy, you did a little bit of it last year, didn't you?
Yeah, like, yeah, entering stuff on the iPad. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, I can see the volunteers doing it and students like the way we learn how to fill out strat sheets and that kind of thing. I just want to say, I'm so excited. I can't even tell you how many years ago I said to Matt Reeves, Matt, it'll be so cool someday when you have a map of STPs and we can click on it and you can show me which artifacts you found in the STP. It's like, we're there,
oh,
yay!
So,
yeah, I see
right,
huge labor savings in all of this.
It's going to be, once the system's set up, I mean, like the front costs, obviously, you know, it's an investment. It's also just going to make us, we're going to do analysis we never would have done before.
Right.
That's the other thing, because the data is already it's in there. So stuff I mean, like I was saying, we were doing this for STPs, like on the fly, writing it down on maps, and now it's just done. So we're going to be able to do stuff we've not ever been able to do, or that we've not been able to do quickly. All right. Let me show you oh, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just gonna say, how many other archaeology groups or sites are working this way?
I
not very many. Oh, Emmy, go ahead.
I actually work at East End. Like, I volunteer there, and we actually use like this exact software and everything to like plot points and everything. Like, we use the same I guess method as well too. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's work that Emmy's been doing at East End Cemetery through University of Richmond. Okay. So they're using it to collect points at grave sites and stuff like that. But as far as in the archaeology world, where you're seeing digital data collection happening the most is in cultural resource management firms. Okay. Where things like how efficiently can we do data collection is really important, because time is money, and they're in the business of making protecting sites and making money, and also winning bids. So they're usually in archaeology, the only place you can cut to make your bid lower is in people and time, and this is a way to actually cut in time the amount of work you have to do without having to cut into the amount of people that you hire, or just underbidding and not being able to actually do the work. So it's so that's where you're seeing a lot of it. I don't know of any other museums, certainly no other presidential sites that are using digital stuff to collect data, particularly the way we are thinking about doing it. So yes. Okay,
will
what
this
can you all,
change the way that college level courses are taught in archaeology? So in other words, instead of just having a professor with, yeah, some slides and photos and PowerPoints, but to actually almost show students the process?
it certainly could. I mean, there's no reason that, you know, it couldn't be like, let's find the firm that, you know, maybe Montpelier's got a live shovel test pit survey going on right now. We could show that in class, right? And you could
Yeah.
actually see the maps get made and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. I forgot, I don't know what I'm sharing with you all. So let me try this again. Okay, let's go in, let's look at, overseer site. So I have lots of web maps. Where to go? Search. Okay, there's my house again. Can't do it that way. All right, so let's look at the overseer site. There are lots of things on that I don't want to be on yet. So this is our site map. I'll make it sideways. That'll help you see it a little better. These are all the excavation units that we've excavated so far at the overseer site, and a bunch of excavation units that we are going to plan to excavate that I've put in there. Right off the bat. So this is, so just like, so this is how this works. Normally, right, we shoot in a unit and then we check out that unit when we're ready to open it. So we would have to write in the checkout sheet, the unit that we're excavating, how big it is, so on and so forth, right? And then we would go and we take pictures and we would fill out forms for each strat that we excavate. Now we actually, and then eventually it would all make it onto the site map after it gets dug, right? Now it actually goes into the site map first. And when Chris and the team go out to shoot it in, I will have already made a list of all the coordinates they need to shoot in, and those will actually all be nail. Those will actually all be visible unit nails. So like each one of these dots is the actual unit nail with its coordinates on it and stuff like that. So like that information is already in here. And then when they actually check out the unit, they'll give it the square will already be there. They'll just click on it to give it the next unit number name. So like these guys over here, right, has no information in it except for that it's site, and my favorite thing is it has its status. So it says unit status to shoot in. So someone has to go put the nails into this thing. Still, it's not marked out. But when that happens, they will change that status to one of these other options, right? It's been shot in, we've opened it and started digging, it's in progress and we're working on stratigraphy, it's in progress and we're working on a feature, it's closed and there's still stratigraphy left to dig, it's closed and there's still a feature left to dig, or there is literally nothing left for us to do in this unit, it is done. This is super useful for me because it means I can just look at this map and I can tell you, I can just click on this unit and I can say, awesome, this one's purple. That means I can just look at its status, for goodness sakes. It's done. We finished this unit, right? Every week I have a meeting with Matt and I go into his office and he says, what have we finished? What do we have left to do? What units are done? And I spend hours like walking around the site, marking off which unit is done, where different units are. So I can, now I just plug my iPad into this TV screen that's in his office and I bring up this map and he can just say, what's up with that unit? And I can click on it and we can talk about it because the information is all there. I don't have to like steal a binder from the site so that I can talk to Matt about a unit. All the information is right there. So this is the unit checkout sheet. It tells you all the same information we typically enter. It's northing and easting, when we opened it, when we closed it, who supervised it, did the profiles get drawn, the notes on, general notes on the unit, all that information is in there. I'm going to zoom in on one unit in particular because this one kind of shows us everything. So this is super useful. I can just click on this unit and I can see just in the sidebar the features that are in it, the unit sheet, and all the different strats, right? All right there, ready for me to look at. So I can go through and I can look at, so this is a strat sheet for the sod layer, right? It's got everything you're typically used to entering: the interpretation, the discussion, excavation type, physical above, physical below. It's sod, so we don't record a whole bunch of those. So that's probably not the best one to look at. Interpretation, like all the stuff you're accustomed to. Color, texture, and check this out. See, wherever there's these little carrots on the sides, these guys, that means you get to choose what you're going to enter. So no one will ever choose a color that doesn't exist in the Munsell book. They will never choose a texture that doesn't exist on our little texture triangle, right? Hue, chroma, all this stuff. All the stuff where you have to look in the guide to decide which one of these things you have to pick, you can just pick it immediately as a choice. A lot of things we can even pre-enter because it's usually the thing. So like I can preset the site, the area, and the location to automatically show up as being 440R219 because everything, I know everything in this area is that site number. So you don't ever have to worry about even data entering some stuff. You can also take a picture from this area, from this spot, or you can attach a file. So we're going to be able to take a photograph with the DSLR, immediately import that onto the iPad, and then pull that image directly and attach it to the to this sheet. So that means I can always click and we can look directly at the plan view photos that were taken. Features are the other piece. So this is what, so again, we can do all of our feature description stuff. This, I haven't updated this yet. This is going to be much more in depth where all of the different things we describe, what the shape of the cut, the depth, the shape of the and plan, all that stuff is going to be entered here. And the best part, here are the pictures. So here's the picture that we took, and here's the drawing of the feature, right? Ready for a report. This is a report ready picture. I mentioned earlier that how this can help with that this is the sitemap. There's a good example of how that is useful. All of these different layers are all layers that I could be adding in. So these are the anomalies that we found on the ground penetrating radar. So if you zoom in here, we found a feature 147. If you want to see a picture of it, it looks like this. You can see the dark staining in the lower right-hand corner here. I was able to, in the field, when this was found, pull up the GPR anomaly map and see that it lines up perfectly with the edges of a GPR anomaly we got on the ground penetrating radar. So I knew that we had found the edge of whatever feature was being discussed, what it was identified. And here on the flip side, remember I said we're going to be opening up a bunch of new units? I was able to pick those units based on where we have anomalies in the ground penetrating radar data, so that we can actually test and see what those things are. And there's no guesswork involved. I literally just have to click on one of these boxes and go in here and and change the status. I don't know why I can't find the things I want to find. There we go. I can change the status to shoot in, submit it. And now Chris knows that that's a unit he's got to shoot in. Just incredibly useful. and going to make things so much more efficient. Once again, the other fun part, and I know I'm going over, so I will, this will be my last thing, is, well, I don't know if you all have seen the dashboard. We can make dashboards for this too, so you can explore and see all the things we're excavating. And then this also is all going to make report writing and stuff like that just that much faster and that much easier. So we can make story maps. This is one that Matt made about metal detector survey, where you can explore. So these could be the reports, right? Where you could go and explore and see the story of the excavations and see the maps and all of that stuff. And then we can also build, and this is a dashboard that Chris made of the site strata in the from the fence line, but we can start making appendices that have all of this information entered in them. So instead of having to write all this stuff and put it in a PDF that's going to get printed, we can put it directly into something that's interactive and online and useful, and you can actually see the maps and the context, click on things, zoom in, zoom out, see pictures, all of that stuff. So you can start to see how this is really going to impact and play into not just how we collect the information, how we do our excavations and analysis, and how we do our reporting, and how we push this stuff to our colleagues and to the public. It's gonna make all of this more efficient, and I think gonna result in better archaeology and better analysis. Here's hoping. That's my big promise. So, does anyone have any questions? I am fire away. Oh, Peggy,
I answered it very briefly in the chat. Oh, sorry.
How do you prevent people from erasing or overwriting data? That's a very good question. We have to be backing things up regularly. So we're going to be building systems so that stuff will be backed up. And we're going to have to be really mindful and really careful. I mean, there are faults in every system. We're going to uncover a whole bunch of new things that are going to be problems. Every solution to one thing creates problems in a new system, and so that's certainly one of the things we're going to have to be real careful of. And yeah, Chris is right. We can also set permissions and things like that, so that only certain people can do certain things and have their ability to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Terry?
Any other questions?
Yeah, Terry, I understand using it going forward. Is there any intention to go back and enter any of the previous information into the system?
Yeah, so that's what the IMLS project is doing right now.
Okay.
That project is working on all of the excavations that were done in the cellars during the restoration. So Hannah and Taylor have been working very, very hard to digitize all of that information. And moving forward, it's going to require grant funding to get all the rest of that done, because the amount of work we're talking about a couple decades worth of data, and you all know how long our field seasons are. And I showed you how much paper we collect. So we're kind of setting the groundwork. So for those of you who are helping us do file name changes and stuff like that on the scanned paperwork, that's sort of what's helping us lay some groundwork for future grant opportunities. But that's like, I would love to see a grant that helps us do this for the whole South Yard, right? To get all of that information pumped into GIS, so that we can start doing this kind of work would be really, really great. Some of this stuff is going to be hard to get that funding from a granting agency. So like, the bunker excavations, which is basically like 10 binders about clay. So, you know, the grant funding, like the sexiness appeal is not necessarily always there for every project, but for things like the South Yard, you know, I think we have opportunities to get grant funding for those kinds of things.
Do you think, can some of this be crowdsourced, getting the digitizing or entry done?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. I do know that, and I'm sure Taylor will agree with me on this one. You know, we are looking, the digitizing that happens is looking at archaeological notes. So that, and the other thing, I don't know if this is an advantage or a disadvantage of the difference between paper and not paper, is with paper, you can write whatever you want on a sheet of paper. So, so sometimes it requires an archaeological training to sort of decipher what's being written on the strat card. With the digital recording, right, there is a lot less room for that kind of ad hoc recording. We have lots of notes fields, you know, other thoughts types of things. But so there is definitely like that training is kind of necessary for elements of it. So, but I think that possibility certainly does exist.
Yeah. Okay.
I could envision like a class or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe, yeah, there's a certain amount of boilerplate entry that could be done, and then an archaeologist has to take it over to finish it.
Another thing I think is a possibility is we have lots of like graduate students and stuff like that who want to write theses using our data.
Mm-hmm.
And we could start attaching the requirement of, that's cool, we're happy to let you use our data, could you also put all these sheets into GIS for us, as sort of the quid pro quo there on this kind of stuff. So I know I would have happily done that for because I'd also be building experience in GIS. So and I'd be getting data that's already excavated. So the swap there is pretty good. Any other questions? No? All good? All made perfect sense? I love it when that happens. Cool. Well, we're actually going to be, in a couple weeks, we're going to be out in the field doing shovel test bits. So you all will be able to watch this system break and crumble to the ground in real time, which I'm sure is very exciting. You'll get to watch it work flawlessly. And hopefully we'll be able to do more of these lunch and learns and things like that, so we can actually do follow-ups where we can, I can show you the information that you've been following along with, and we can talk about what it might mean, how we're interpreting things, what our next steps are, so on and so forth. So cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's always good to see all your faces.
Thank you.
So, or your names, I guess, also. So anyway, cool. Well, take care. I think Matt's doing a Friday live, Facebook Dig Montpelier live, I assume on Friday. So you can tune in for that. Another thing that's worth noting, if you want, the property is not only open, but we're also running tours of the landscape. So, Thursday through Monday, there are walking tours of the property, and that includes what are called expert experience tours by a number of different people who work at Montpelier, but Matt, Mary, and I are giving some of those. It's about the enslaved landscape at Montpelier. So if you feel like you need to walk around in the heat and want to come see us, check the website. You can come join us on a walking tour as well. So there's stuff coming. We're gradually coming back to life here at Montpelier. So.
Amen.
All right. Well, good to see you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I also